Hello, you're listening to the Shetland Times podcast with me, your podcast host, Marjolein Robertson. And this week I'm joined by Councillor Ryan Thomson. Hi, Ryan.
Hello, Marjolein. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah. Should I call you? I want to say Councillor Thomson.
Ryan's fine.
Yeah, because if I say Councillor too much, I might just end up calling you Dad. Yeah, my dad was councillor, nothing
that's,
yet.
That's true, yeah. No, Ryan's fine.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us. Can you give a kind of brief background of yourself for the listeners here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, my name is Ryan Thomson. I'm originally Balsund in Unst. That's why I stand for the North Isles ward for the SIC, despite the fact that I live in Wadbista at the moment. I have a wife and 3 bairns, and I, as I say, I'm councillor for the North Isles, but I'm also chair of the Environment and Transport Committee.
Yes, and that's really relevant of why we're speaking today as well, because environmental, you have been in the news quite a lot recently.
Mm-hmm, yes, it's more to do with the fact that since the start of the year, me and a couple of people who have been speaking about this for a pretty while now have started a single-use plastics campaign, which is to not just get businesses on board in terms of trying to reduce the amount of single-use plastics that people are using in Shetland, but also to raise awareness of just how much single-use plastics there are out there, which is something that's going on not just locally, but it's a big topic nationally as well at the moment.
Could you just, for layman's terms, just exactly explain what single-use plastics are? Yeah,
well, I mean, there's various different whoever you speak to has a different definition of single-use plastic, but the way it's that I define it is something that is only ever used once and disposed of again.
Okay.
It depends how far down the line you can go with single-use plastics. People have there's a grey area there as to the definition of a single-use plastic, but I mean certainly we're starting with straws and cups, for example.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good one. Like food packaging is very obviously single-use plastic, but then you get into the areas where you get into like toothbrushes, and the thing is that no one re-hairs a toothbrush. No. I don't know what you call it, so it kind of is a single-use plastic, but overall, right. But I suppose that's almost a bigger issue to tackle. But great. So what is the first steps you've been taking with this campaign? Well,
the first steps is to speak to as many businesses as we could get on board. I took the first step of speaking to the business owners that I knew personally.
Yeah.
Gauged their opinion and their idea before it really took off. They said, "Yeah, no, this is a great idea. I think we could do something with this." So we published a Facebook page, which took off pretty quickly, far quicker than I initially thought it would.
It's brilliant. I think because I think people are generally concerned about their environment and want to actually preserve it.
I think people, I mean, you see there's a couple of documentaries that have really brought it to people's attention. There's The Blue Planet, obviously, with David Attenborough, that was recently on the BBC, but there's also a Netflix documentary, the name of which eludes me at the moment, but it was absolutely fantastic. They started off doing a documentary about whales, I think it was, and that was the whole purpose of them being out there in the documentary, and they had to wade through oceans of plastic to get to the whales, and they thought, well, maybe there's something here that we could do about plastic. So they decided to completely change the slant of the documentary about 10 minutes in, and they did it on plastics, and the amount of plastics that's out there in the oceans. I mean, when we think about the plastic that immediately springs to mind, you think of water bottles, milk cartons, toothbrushes, cotton buds, and things like that. But the experiments that they were doing was simply just getting a bucket of water at any point in the sea. It just looks completely free, crystal clear, beautiful water. Getting a bucket full of water and just seeing how much plastic was in that bucket of water, tiny particles that the fish were, and the whales and the birds and the sea life were eating. It's incredibly alarming. It's probably one of the scariest films and documentaries I've ever seen in my life. And you see it. I mean, there's pictures of Shetland of decomposing birds, and then when the bird is decomposed, you see just the amount of plastic that's in that bird. So it's definitely coming to the fore now, where people are realising just the seriousness of the problem. And yes, that bottle is a bottle, but it's going to get broken up into tinier particles, and it'll never disappear entirely. And it's now to the point where it's entering our food chain, and people are actually being born with plastic chemicals in their bloodstream.
Wow.
That's
terrifying. And it's one of those, it's funny, it doesn't hit home till it hits the humans almost.
Yeah.
But I know there is another documentary, and I'd see it about the Plasticky, which there's a whole area in the North Pacific Ocean. I think it's North Pacific, and it's this, the sea is just covered in plastic that's floating in this massive swirling pool, and they made a boat of recycled materials to sail it across. It took ages. And that's just, we don't know it's there. In fact, when I was in New Zealand, there's this huge story in the news, because there's lots of islands around New Zealand with like rare species of plant and animal and bird, so they just don't go there. It's usually just birds and plants, no mammals, and they just don't go there because they don't introduce rats. We don't want humans to bring any pests, and they just leave it. But scientists go every now and then to just check everything, and they went to one of the islands that is just reserved for the nature of the flora and fauna, and when they got there, the beaches were covered in plastic to the point where they had to call through like rescue teams to go and just clean the beaches.
Yeah.
So even the untouched, they thought it's untouched by humans, but we've managed to completely pollute an island we haven't stepped foot on.
Yeah. I mean, that's the stage that it's at now, and it's getting to the point now where it's getting worse. We're making far more plastic now than we ever have, and the bottom line is every single piece of plastic that we've ever created still exists. It's got to be somewhere. It's got to go somewhere. And at the end of the day, it's going into landfill, it's going into oceans, and people say, for example, a straw, it takes about 2 or 3 minutes average time is use. It takes 200 years to disappear.
Wow.
They say it biodegrade. It doesn't actually biodegrade because it disappears, but the chemicals will remain in the soil forever. So although we're saying that yes, 200 years it's going to be gone, as we will obviously be, but it'll never disappear. It's never going to entirely disappear, and the alternative would be to burn it, and then you've got the chemicals that creates. So we're in a position where nationally, finally, the government are starting to realise that this is an issue. They've set very weak targets of around about 25 years or longer, I think, in terms of getting single-use plastics under control, which is a step in the right direction, but it's nowhere near the level that it needs to be. I mean, the bottom line is we've got alternatives already in place. We've got alternatives to plastic for just about every single thing. We don't need plastics, single-use plastics. So it's just about changing that mentality, not necessarily with people, the customers and the consumers, because the vast majority of people would go plastic-free if they could.
Yeah.
The option's not there from the business owners and the manufacturers. So it's about changing that mentality there. But in terms of our project, it's just baby steps. I mean, I'm looking at the window here and I can see a big stream of plastic in the hill there.
Oh, yeah.
It's literally everywhere. So as you say, it's very much aware. People are aware of the situation now, and that's half the battle. And as long as we as a community can start putting pressure on the big organisations and the big companies, then that's, as you say, that's half the battle.
So what ways can people get involved? Like, for instance, tackling the bigger picture. Like, is there ways you can write letters or?
Yeah, I mean,
make your voice heard.
A lot of the bigger companies, for example, Iceland, have said that they were going to be doing away with single-use plastics within 5 years. I think by 2023.
Wow.
I think. So that's a massive chain. If you can get your Asda's and your Sainsbury's and your Tesco's and your Co-ops to do exactly the same thing, set that 5-year target, because 5 years is more than enough for these level types of companies to stop doing ridiculous things like covering their fruit in plastic. When was the last time somebody bought a cucumber that wasn't wrapped in plastic, for example?
I know. I went to the supermarket today and I couldn't have found loose mushrooms, I couldn't have found loose courgettes, like I couldn't find the loose vegetables. And I have seen, but didn't say that, I've seen a pre-peeled orange in a plastic wrapper, and that was just, it made me really angry because orange is in a wrapper itself naturally. It just...
There was that famous one of individual bananas being wrapped in plastic.
No.
That did the rounds a few years ago on Facebook. I mean, it's crazy. But it's a case of, I mean, even with in the shop, the fruit and veg that we get, it comes in plastic. Now, we take the plastic off and put it out loose, but the plastic's still there. So you're just hiding the problem. You're masking the problem. The problem is where the source, and you need to nip it at the source. So the likes of Iceland have realised that, and a lot of the bigger companies now are starting to do that. And the more bigger companies that do it, the more pressure will be on the other companies to do it. So there is real momentum there.
Well, I always wonder, is there any government legislation about, like, for instance, health and safety and, like, environmental health with food that stipulates certain things have to be kept in plastic?
It's a very good question. I'm not entirely sure.
Tell me about government legislation. Yeah.
No. It's a very good question. I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, you're right. From a health and safety point of view, some things perhaps do, but I wouldn't have thought things like fruit and veg would be classed as that. I'm thinking more along the lines of your bleaches and things like that. That will be trickier, and your washing up liquids and things like that will be trickier. But I mean, down south, down in the mainland, there was a fantastic example of a lady who's opened a completely plastic-free shop in London.
Oh, amazing!
I think it's the first one in the UK, or in London certainly.
I would imagine that to be like an old-fashioned grocer's.
Pretty much so. It's exactly. You've got massive glass jars of flour, and you've got massive jars of things like washing up liquid that you can go with your own, be it plastic or not, container of say fairy liquid, and it's empty, and you can go into this shop and fill it up
and weigh it
and maybe that's the way forward, in a more simpler form. I don't know, or as I say, just find something alternative to plastic, or a biodegradable alternative to put the washing liquid in. There is definitely real mentality there for a shift, and more Shetlanders are seeing that. The amount of people that participate in the Devore Red Ups, for example, that go on the beaches.
Europe's largest community tidy up.
I think it is.
Or definitely Britain's largest community tidy up.
And per head of population, I would imagine it's probably one of the world's biggest. So the amount of people in Shetland that realise that the seriousness of the issue, if they're doing beach cleans, or I stopped at the side of the road just a couple of days ago on my way to work, and I thought, I'll see how long it takes me to fill a black bag of, and about 80% of it was plastic. There was cans and crisp wrappers and whatnot, but it took 3 minutes.
3 minutes
to fill a black bag.
What road was this?
It was on the Land Games.
I swear it's worse than it was like 10 years ago, but I don't know if it's because I'm just noticing it more because I'm driving. I don't know, but I swear it's worse.
No, you're absolutely right, and I'm of the same. I don't know if it's worse or if it's simply because it's become more of an issue, so we're looking out for it more. I don't actually know.
It makes me so angry because if you finish a bottle of juice, you're in your car, take home and put it in a bin. Like, it makes me so angry.
You can tell by the state of my van that I do not fling my rubbish out of my window. It's lying on the floor of the passenger side. It needs a serious clean out. But going along the Land Games, there is no other way. There's no other what's the word I'm looking for?
Reason for it
there's
to
no,
be there?
yeah. I mean, there's
not a black bag that's burst open just outside someone's house. It's actually been thrown into a car window.
There's no other reason, possibly, that anybody could be there other than for that rubbish to be there, other than somebody's just flung it out the window.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody anywhere near it. There's no car park there. There's nothing. So it's a case of education in terms of the fact that out of sight, out of mind, perhaps, with some people. If they've flung it out the window, they didn't have to think about it again. Somebody has to think about it again, and that will affect. I mean, a lot of that, the amount of rubbish that was in the ditches, for example, and it has a profound effect on everybody. Just flinging it out the window isn't helping anybody, and perhaps people think, well, there's a devoted enemy, it'll get picked up, but that's obviously the mentality of the vast minority of folk, but it only takes a handful of folk to make a substantial mess.
I used to work in the Sunborough Head Lighthouse that's run by the Amenity Trust, and there is a section when you're going through the different like interpretive displays and the educational part of it, and there's actually a room which was dedicated to bird populations, and it spoke a lot about the effects of like man basically essentially on the bird populations, and one huge area of that, like most of it, was about plastics and waste, especially because a lot of the birds we have are like shallow feeders. I'm gonna test myself here. The one that's like a pretty seagull, this is a kittiwake. The kittiwake is a shallow diver, so it's incredibly susceptible to plastics floating on the surface, and it kills birds because either they get poisoned by the plastic or they literally eat so much plastic they think they're full and stop eating food. It's so sad. But this room is brutal, but it was so important because you take the children in and you show them, if you drop this is the effect it can have directly on nature, and they absorb it so well. It's just that kind of educating the younger generation, hopefully to find that maybe if somebody they saw dump something, maybe it's an older member of their family, they would hopefully say don't do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. No, that's right. And I think, to be fair, that message is getting out to the younger generation. I know through my bairns, they seem very well. James, my older boy, seems very, very clued up on the downsides of pollution and litter and plastic and all the rest of it. So it is definitely something that they work on in schools, and it's perhaps not something that we worked on. Me and you are similar age in school at what age, but it's definitely something that they're working on now, and certainly in terms of our plastic campaign, we are speaking to schools about getting them on board and seeing if there is any way that we can link in the group to the school and the education. And
well, for instance, before you said about biodegradable today to me just now, and I thought I was pretty clued up on this, but I thought biodegradable gone. I never thought about the chemicals that have leached out of it never leaving. So in my head, biodegradable was good, even if it took a while. So just you tell me that today has just made me realise how much more harmful it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that come with biodegradable plastics. Yep, they disappear, but the chemical trace will always be there, and it'll be in the soil, and then it'll things will grow in the soil or all the rest of it, or if you've got chickens or birds, particularly birds, will be pecking away looking for worms and all the rest of it, and it'll enter. I mean, it always enters into the wildlife. So it's something that as you say, that there is always alternatives to plastic, and it's just about making sure that these alternatives are the default option. For example, if somebody orders straws or somebody wants a straw, they get a paper straw, or they instead of a plastic straw,
like the Pity Shop does now. The
Pity Shop does, we were in there. I met Neil Riddle for a cup of coffee this morning in the Pity Shop cafe, and they have done extremely well. We cutting away single-use plastics to the point where I think they're entirely single-use plastic free now. Yeah,
they say that, so that's brilliant. Yeah, it's so good. And we spoke quickly because I was speaking about Sunborough Head, and you spoke about the Red Up. The Amenity Trust, I mean, their ethos is to protect Shetland's built-in natural environment. So have you done any work with them about this situation as well? Or?
Yes, well, me and Sita Gowdy have been trying to meet for a couple of weeks now, but for one reason or another it's never worked out. But we've spoken plenty of times about it, and we're both very, very keen to work together on it. The Amenity Trust are also doing something, a project on single-use plastic this year as well. So it's going to tie in perfectly with them, and I'm going to be meeting Sita hopefully next week or as soon as possible, and we're going to get something organised. Another thing that we're possibly looking at is having a single day where we try to do a red up of the whole of Shetland from Sunborough to Scott on a single day.
I'm keen.
And say if we can get 90 people, it's about 90 mile-ish, not miles. If we can get 90 people, it's a mile each, and then we'll have some sort of social event after, be it a tea and coffee or a band of some sort, and anybody who's participated can get free entry into this spree.
You basically, your ticket is your bag of Brock you've taken.
Exactly, yes.
That's brilliant.
So we're putting things like this, and we need to speak to the Amenity Trust to try and work together on that, because we want it to be entirely separate for the Devore Reddit. The Devore Reddit did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
They work with beaches and roads as well, obviously, but side roads. But I don't think there's any proper Reddit that does the proper main roads.
And everyone would see it all day while they're driving by.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant idea.
And then if we can get to the very end of the day, say if it tax was 6 to 8 hours or whatever, 90 was, or if we can get more, well, it'd be fantastic. Get all the Brook together and just show how much Brook that there is. Just on the main roads alone in Shetland. That's no on the coast.
Just on the A970?
Just on the A970.
That's a brilliant idea.
So,
please keep us posted. Will that be on the Facebook page?
That'll be on the Facebook page very shortly, yeah.
That'd be great. I had a website I was going to tell you, because as well we spoke about the fact like a lot of this needs to change with the big businesses and the high levels, but there is there's things that everyday folk can do to change their plastic intake, and maybe it's a rude word, but it's a real website. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's called Trash is for Tossers, and it's a website about things in your house that you've had your whole life that are plastic that you wouldn't even think that there's alternatives for, perhaps. So it's like even your toothbrush, it's like getting a bamboo toothbrush instead. It's things you can buy that don't come in plastic packaging, things you can buy in the house to replace the plastic. And one of the things is also, because it's quite new, a lot of this stuff is still a bit dearer. But then sometimes if you look into it, a lot of this stuff lasts a lot longer. So this website's just got a great list of just small things you can change around your house, which means you buying less plastic. Because I think it started with this woman who basically tried to see if she could live for a week without plastic. And then she realised that with some of the things it's actually quite simple. So she's written a guide online on how to do it.
That sounds good. Yeah, no, I mean, I'll have to look at that website we were speaking before, and it's one that I'd never actually heard of, so I'll certainly give it a look. But no, you're absolutely right. There's things, I don't again how that lady got on, but it would be extremely difficult to live without plastic. I mean, even starting the campaign, I've been taught by several people who have liked the page, and I've spoken to them about things that have plastic in that you would never even think about. For example, tea bags.
Sorry. Oh my gosh.
Tea bags
I put them in my compost heap.
Yeah,
I probably shouldn't have.
So yeah, no, I mean it's right. No, something I would never ever think of.
Because I've heard that if it's white, it's got bleach in it. If your tea bag is white, it's because they've bleached it to look white. Oh. So actually, the brown coloured tea bag's actually more better for you.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
But then I suppose things like tea pigs, the tea bags are made of something mad like silk, but they're a material. So I wonder if they're okay.
It's the quite. I don't know the.
But then they've got plastic on their packaging to look through at the bags.
Plastic on the packaging, and it's. I think it's the plastic that binds the tea bag together. I think if I can recall the conversation.
So actually loose leaf tea is the way to go.
Loose leaf tea is the way to go. Yeah, but So it's things like that you're putting the tea bag, which is plastic, in your drink, and you're drinking it. So it's things like that. I mean, I would never ever have even considered that as something that have plastic in it. And other things like people point out, it's obvious now because it's been it's the famous picture of the seahorse carrying the cotton bud.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those things that you would never think about, and there are alternatives, obviously, to plastic cotton buds. Am I
right in saying cotton buds are actually going to be illegal in Scotland? They're going to stop selling them.
Yeah, they are looking at that in straws, I think, but specifically cotton buds. I think the Scottish Government are coming out with some sort of legislation very shortly.
I don't know how I'm going to clean my lugs, but I'll find something.
I don't think you're meant to clean your lugs with cotton buds anyway.
I know, I'm so bad.
We all do.
What I find really interesting is if we like this successful move away from plastic, the transition to have like a plasticless society perhaps in future, then if you look at the history of the human race, there will be this frantic blip of about 2 or 3 generations that used all the plastic. And then we went back to life, and I suppose things might take longer, like it'd be longer getting your errands if it's a grocery style environment, but overall it's a better world. Like I always imagined it'd be so cool to have a supermarket where you go in with all your Tupperware and you just weigh each thing. as you go through, and it might calculate it on some kind of calculator you get for the door, and then at the end you go to the till of your calculator and then put it through and you pay for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's very much...
That's how I've imagined it.
That's very similar to the lady that's opened her shop in London. It will take a bit longer, but Shetland, I don't think that's going to be a real issue. We like a good shop and a good yard, and we're doing our errands anyway. It's a trip to the local shop, be it the supermarket or your local grocery store, it's not just necessarily to grab your errands, it's also a social thing as well. So I think Shetland will be alright.
Yeah, and also plastics, half the time, because it's packaged in plastic, you'd like, I don't need that much, but I'm just going to buy it anyway because it's there. And food goes off. So.
Yeah. I mean,
I could speak for this all day. I haven't really had to stop.
No, but it is a case of being a shop owner. It's no even just the fact that everything is bottled in plastic or everything is wrapped in plastic. Everything, for example, if you're buying a case of beer, is wrapped in the packaging is wrapped in plastic. Oh yeah,
when you get a slab, but you have
when
to.
You get a slab.
Yeah. Sorry.
The ring pulls as well.
Yeah.
That you're obviously everybody's encouraged to cut up before they dispose of. How many people actually do? It's everything. There's so many things that we didn't even think of that impacts. Everything that comes into the shop is wrapped in plastic, and then it comes in on a pallet to stop the pallet from falling over. The pallet's wrapped in plastic. So it's everything we're going to have to change. It's a mentality thing, but that's why the campaign is starting with baby steps. We're only starting with the cups and the straws.
Yeah.
The target obviously was the end of 2018, but we've gotten so many businesses on board. We think we're going to probably be able to bring that forward significantly.
That's amazing.
And then start on something else.
And the good thing about reducing cups and straws is that those are the things that, not to be mean about the public, but because that's the things the public are taking, because companies they're made to carefully get rid of the rubbish. You couldn't just throw it at the back door.
Yeah.
But somebody could buy a plastic cup and then chuck that out the car window. So I suppose by actually stopping it being plastic in the first place, you're reducing that problem as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. So,
Sorry, I'm just excited.
I mean, if we can get, say, if for example, if Mia gains into the shop and we're having a function of some sort, and we're needing straws and cups, we need to the first thing that we come across is biodegradable options. It's paper straws and it's paper cups.
Yeah.
So we don't even have the option to buy these things. If you're going to Marille and you're having a cocktail or whatever, you get a paper straw or no straw even.
Or you put a sealant on your lipstick so it's sealed on you and you don't need a straw.
Absolutely.
That's my comeback.
That's a tip.
And then you don't need to reapply during the night.
I'll remember that next time. No. So I mean, it's just a case of changing the mentality. But as consumers, if we can get the businesses to do it for us, then we don't even have to think about it.
That's good. Well, thank you so much. I could speak to you all day, and I keep thinking more things I like to speak about. But it's also nice that you're so enthusiastic and concerned about the environment, because it's because you're the local councillor, it's nice to see with this idea of tackling plastic as something for the long term for Shetland's benefits.
Yeah, absolutely.
The world's benefits. So it's really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm maybe only here for 5 years, and
as a councillor,
of course, yes, hopefully, yeah. As a councillor, I'm maybe only going to be here for 5 years, so in the political terms, 5 years really not a long time to try and get things done.
Yeah.
And with the national position as it is at the moment, where we're just simply firefighting budgets and budget restraints and all the rest of it, I think it's very important for us to be seen to be trying to make a difference. And as chairman of obviously the Environment Committee, then it's something that needs to be done as far as I'm concerned, and I seriously think that Shetland can lead the way on this nationally.
Thank you, and thank you for speaking to us today.
No problem. Thank you very much.
And cheerio, and thanks for listening, listeners. Cheerio.
Ciao.